Right. And in a way, maybe the central planning. Okay, I won't say that it's worse because if we talk about Stalin, we could see how that went and led to hundreds of millions of people who died. But if we think about this whole thing in the long run, those were happening at the nation state level, that kind of central planning. And here you just said supranational, transnational organizations who are trying to decide basically what the utopia should look like. So, what do you think the dangers of that are in the long run if it does play out uninterrupted and they're successful at whatever their mission is for this kind of, I guess, green new world?
Well, I think one way of looking at this is to consider what the World Economic Forum, the WEF, is doing in this particular area. And you can go on their websites and look up the things that they print and the books that Klaus Schwab writes, and it's very clear that he wants what he calls stakeholder capitalism to replace the focus upon profit and shareholder value that is what market capitalism is focused upon. So this is not made up stuff. This is not tinfoil stuff. They are very clear about what they want to achieve. Schwab himself has said we need to completely revisit the way that we think about the economy, and that of course involves rethinking the role of the state, rethinking the role of civil society and NGOs vis-a-vis the economy. So there's no question that this is the agenda that's being pursued. Now you may ask, what does this look like? What is the goal? The goal, I would argue, is a progressive form of what's called corporatism. Now, by corporatism, I don't mean corporations. What I mean by corporatism is the idea that you have business, civil society, NGOs, maybe unions, etc. And these are all organizations that are coordinated from the top down by the government. And the emphasis is upon building and establishing and then reinforcing consensus on any number of questions, whether it's the economy, whether it's the environment, whether it's things like climate change, whatever it happens to be. And this system, corporatism, is not a new system. It's a system that was deployed in the 1920s and 1930s in countries ranging from Mussolini's Italy to even things like the New Deal. The New Deal was heavily influenced by corporatist thinking. And it's not a sort of command and control arrangement. It's much more about, as I said, coordinating things from the top down. You allow a certain degree of freedom so that businesses can still make enough money, that people feel sufficiently free that they can't say that they are overtly oppressed. But the point is to build, establish, and reinforce a consensus on whatever the topic happens to be. And the point, of course, is that if you disagree with the consensus, if you step outside the consensus, then you have no political support, you have no cultural support, you have no economic support, because corporatism, by definition, doesn't tolerate people moving outside whatever the consensus happens to be. So this is not a new political system. It's a system that was used by different regimes in the 1920s and 1930s. Some people would even argue that it's influential in, for example, the European Union today and the way that the European Union operates. But I think that is the political goal. Now, in the 1920s and 1930s, certainly in Europe, it tended to have a hard right complexion. But in the 2020s West, I would argue corporatism has this distinctive, progressive, left tint to it. So the consensus that they're trying to establish through corporatist means is very much a left-leaning, progressive one that marginalizes very quickly anyone who doesn't sign up to those causes.